Hello, and thank you for joining us for the Pharmacy Cannabis Lecture Series. Each session is designed to deliver a small and in-depth dose of cannabis education. I'm Candace Hawes, and I want to thank all of our viewers and all of our customers from the Pottery, the Pharmacy Santa Ana, Santa Barbara, and Berkeley for joining us today. In this session, we're going to be discussing California's Compassionate Donation Program. In 1996, Dennis Perrone, Brownie Mary, Dale Garinger from California Normal, other patients and lawyers were at the center of the AIDS epidemic, and they saw the benefit that cannabis was delivering to their loved ones. They decided to work together and change the laws to pass a law that would protect those using cannabis for medical purposes and those providing cannabis to people that needed it for medical reasons. The nation's first law, Prop 215, did not allow for the profit of cannabis. Cannabis could be either grown by patients or it could be grown by a caregiver who could only be reimbursed for their expenses. That passed, as we now see today, with the passing of MCRSA, the passage of Prop 64, and the adoptions of regulations, which put a temporary end to the ability of generous cannabis companies to donate cannabis to patients in need. Many cannabis patients and compassion programs felt left behind. That is until SB 34, otherwise known as the Dennis Perrone and Brownie Mary Compassionate Use Act. This law allows cannabis cultivators, manufacturers, distributors, and retailers to designate cannabis and cannabis products as donations. These donations can be distributed to qualified patients, and what we're going to be discussing today. Our guest speaker is my friend and drug policy reform colleague, Eric Goepel. I'm very excited to have him today. Eric is an advocate and policy professional focused on the intersection between veteran health and cannabis. Eric is a U.S. Army veteran of the Iraq War. He served for 7 years, with 6 spent in the Special Operations Community. After his military service, Eric worked as a defense contractor in Afghanistan before returning to school, where he attended the very prestigious University of California, Berkeley, graduating with a BA in political science. During and after college, Eric worked in various policy roles in Washington, D.C., from a think tank to Senate staff to a nonprofit on national security and veteran affairs. At this time at the American Legion, America's largest wartime veteran association, Eric developed the organizational initiatives and policies aimed at combating the opioid epidemic. Spurred by his drug policy work and realizing the importance of making cannabis available as a medicine, in 2018, alongside fellow Iraq War veteran Bill Ferguson, he founded the Veterans Cannabis Coalition. The Veterans Cannabis Coalition is an effort dedicated to ending cannabis prohibition and driving the research and development of cannabis-based treatments. In California, VCC established one of the first legally compliant compassionate donation programs under the state law SB 34 and is actively building a support network of patient home growers. Eric also sits on the board of directors for Los Angeles NORML, the national organization for the reform of marijuana laws. I'm really excited to welcome Eric to be with us today to talk about the history of the compassionate donation program, how cannabis companies can participate in case they're watching, and then how patients who need can also apply. Eric, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Candace, for that introduction. Saved me some time.
Yeah,
I can just jump right into it. I appreciate it. Okay, so as Candace very ably laid out, both of what Veterans Cannabis Coalition, what our focus is. My partner Bill and I, we started off at the federal level working on. At the time, it was the VA Medicinal Cannabis Research Act of 2018. And that became the first, what I would consider a piece of cannabis reform legislation to ever pass through congressional committee. And at the time, I think, on that sort of success, we thought it was going to be, or veterans and cannabis research especially was going to be the kind of thing that opened up, broader reform. As we've seen in the last few years, especially safe banking, the passage of the Safe Banking Act and the passage of the MORE Act, both through the House of Representatives, but neither of which have really gotten any consideration in the Senate. There's still a number of, major obstacles and barriers to advancing, federal reform. And luckily I don't, I have the ability to kind of exist in whatever worlds and take up whatever work I choose to. And so I saw the need to connect, a lot of what the grassroots folks have been working on, or, at least the potential that we could achieve in kind of connecting a lot of the grassroots work that existed into these, national discussions. Because, what happens in California, California is a guide for, in policy making for a lot of other states, largely because it's a massive state. There's 40 million people in the state of California. So if you can develop something that actually is effective, like let's say SB 34, the only law of its kind that allows whether an adult use or medical license holder to donate product to patients at no cost and not have to pay any attendant state taxes on donations that they make. So let me move on to the next slide and just get back into connecting the dots here, right, between what we're talking about, the good that cannabis can do. We have the ability in California to demonstrate exactly what that looks like through SB 34. Initially, SB 34 was introduced in 2018. It was vetoed, or pocket vetoed specifically, by Governor Jerry Brown at the tail end of his term. It had to be reintroduced in the following year, and then was signed into law by Gavin Newsom in 2019. Went into effect March 1st, 2020. And as Candace said, it's named after Dennis Peron and Brownie Mary, who were two of the key advocates that fought for the passage of Proposition 215, and whose advocacy was all grounded in compassion. Dennis Peron and Brownie Mary is renowned for making thousands of THC-filled brownies for cancer and AIDS patients, and other people who were suffering, and specifically suffering from diseases that made it difficult to eat, or destroyed the desire to eat. And as we've seen, it's like this sort of joke about the munchies, right? Like, well, I mean, if you're wasting away, like the munchies can be will literally save your life.
Yes.
Because without food, without sleep, two of the things that cannabis is best, especially THC, is best associated with. Without those things, it isn't near impossible to ever recover or get better from whatever you're dealing with. And obviously it's not as I wouldn't go so far as to say it was saved anyone's life straight out, right? But what it did was provide a quality of life improvement to everyone that was able to get access to it. And on the basis of that, almost more than 25 years ago now, what we have is, on the basis of what Prop 215 was about, focusing on medical cannabis, centering the patients, even though it didn't provide, I think, anywhere close to the kind of legal protections that people wanted, right? I mean, patients were still getting raided.
Yeah.
No one was operating legally. Everyone was sort of in this weird gray space, where, maybe the city was cool with you, maybe they weren't, but no one was sending any money to the state. It wasn't a sustainable system, I think, and certainly not like a market, and as much as we don't like to, center profit, how are people going to be accessing cannabis, right? In this interim period between when, cannabis is considered like this adult use, consumer packaged good, and when it's now widely incorporated into the medical system, most people who are going to be consuming medical cannabis are going to be buying it from adult use dispensaries, or other licensed, points of retail. So it is incredibly important for adult use, states to ensure that, the people who, again, what was this all about in the beginning? It wasn't about, tax revenue. That was the farthest from anyone's consideration. There was almost no, consideration, for that in the passage of Prop 215. And that became, a bit of an issue, because it then became like, okay, so no taxes, there's no regulations. So how does any of this, continue or scale, or, how do we ensure, from a consumer, protection perspective, how do we ensure labs are real, providing real tests, and, people aren't just passing off garbage into the market, and potentially, harming consumers. All that plays into, why something like SB 34 is so important, right? Because, what the California legal market offers today is, one of the highest testing, threshold testing regimes, I think, in legal cannabis. It is easily one of the most heavily and I think and certainly over-regulated cannabis markets in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And but as a result of that, we have, I think, shown at least what has started to work and what doesn't. And we've seen how over-regulation has sustained the unregulated market and things of that nature. So how does SB 34 play into all this? How does compassion work into these bigger concerns about tax and regulation and about expansion of licensing? Because license expansion is necessary to increase actual access, right? Mm-hmm. There are so many deserts of physical cannabis access in California, which is a massive state with 40 million people, right? And a lot of 24 million live in like greater Southern California, but there's still a lot. But everybody deserves access to legal cannabis, and it's not something that is made any easier, of course, by the local control that's sort of baked into Prop 64. And that, unfortunately, is something that has basically replicated itself across the country. We're seeing in New York, for example, most of the municipalities in New York State have opted out of licensed cannabis retail, or cannabis licensing of any kind. But again, cannabis has led the way in Orange County. Santa Ana used to be the only place, in the entire county of 3.5 million people where there was licensed retail. Now Costa Mesa, other cities are, starting to step up, and all of that is good in the grand scheme of things, right? Because it's increasing the number of places where we have legal points of access. But if the cannabis is still inaccessible because it's, it represents a high, out-of-pocket cost, whether it's from a consumer or patient, because I'll be honest, right? Like, everybody's consuming cannabis because of the effects, mm-hmm. right? Nobody's consuming it because of like a sort of perceived something, right? Like, it does something. Yes. It does it repeatedly, and it does it pretty consistently, which is why it works for patients, right? If it didn't, if it was, no better than placebo, we wouldn't be in this situation. But it does, it has, these effects are persistent and consistent. And, and we call it like, is it recreational to relax? Isn't there some medical benefit, to that as well? And that's where this blurring of sort of medical or adult use. And I just, like to sort of center it back down into like, people are using this, to derive some sort of benefit from it. Mm-hmm. Right. And I would consider all of those benefits to be medical in nature, if you want to split hairs about it. And regardless of whatever medical claims, I don't have to make medical claims, actually. I can just point to the fact that there is research supporting that when given the option, accessible, affordable cannabis, people will substitute that for alcohol, tobacco, and other unregulated drugs. Yep. And no matter the effects of cannabis, they are a world's difference in harm between tobacco and alcohol alone. 525,000 people every year die from alcohol and tobacco associated deaths. Mm-hmm. Estimated, this is like a 15, 20 year ago estimate from the CDC, estimated to cost the public $500 billion, in, deaths and violence and accidents and, any number of, attendant causes that come from, chronic use of tobacco or alcohol. As much as the feds hate cannabis, they have never claimed in the 50 years that the Controlled Substances Act has existed, that cannabis has ever caused any death. And that's not me saying that, right? That's the feds. And if anyone has a reason to, and they've tried to pin every, specious thing to cannabis, psychosis, and it'll cause schizophrenia, it's a gateway drug, and it's like, it'll, destroy your sperm count, and, any number of, stigmatized and, poorly evidenced and supported claims that the federal government has tried to attach to cannabis. In all of that time, they have never actually claimed a cannabis death. Yep. And I would say that's not because cannabis can't hurt you. It's not because cannabis has no risk. And, but it is just to point out that, like, when we talk about like regulating or taxing cannabis, it's not a vice. Like, it's not gambling, it's not tobacco, it's not alcohol, right? Those are vices, mm-hmm. right? it is a public good. It's a public benefit. And going back to SB 34 here, we have a process in California to demonstrate that it is a public good, right? Because the industry has the potential to give away just in what it would otherwise destroy, because it can't, in waste. It can give away tens of millions of dollars, just off stuff that would otherwise be, mulched or, otherwise destroyed to the DCC standard.
I totally agree. I see trash cans, huge trash cans,
oh, yeah,
thrown away or destroyed like every month. So I totally agree. And that's why I'm so excited to have this topic today, because we want to educate people on how they could, take advantage of this public benefit.
Well, and so, how this relates to the cannabis industry, because we've gone over a little bit, it's, SB 34, it's a law, right? It's a statute within the state of California. The only one of its kind, to my knowledge. I'm not aware of any other state or country that includes Canada and Uruguay and, the medical programs that exist in, in Europe and, elsewhere, Thailand, whatever, anywhere that that exists this kind of statutory ability for a licensed operator to give away cannabis to however that, that legal regime determines who, as a patient, right? So in California, it's very easy to qualify as a patient. You just need a doctor's recommendation. That is it. It is, of course, also an option to use a state-issued medical marijuana identification card, which you go through at a county level. But, that tends to be pretty burdensome. It's an additional cost, and it's largely unnecessary, especially when it comes to accessing SB 34 donations from a patient perspective. The only difference is, and I can get into this a little bit later, but in the slide, the only difference is that the retailer has to verify and keep documentation of doctor's recommendations. The MMIC card is a little bit easier for them to process, essentially. But coming from Prop 215, where everyone, was at least theoretically in the back, verifying doctor's recommendations, anytime that you rolled into a dispensary, because everyone was everyone was a medical only, right? So you had to have a doctor's recommendation to get into a Prop 215 era shop. Again, for the most part, great, accepting the gray zone stuff that was going on. So within the cannabis industry, anyone can participate, any license holder can participate in the SB 34 process. But as far as, who can donate what, you have to have ownership of it, right? So a cultivator who has not yet sent on, their flower, for example, could donate that. But it would have to be, processed, tested, packaged, and then distributed to a retailer. Retailers could donate, the finished products that they have available in their inventory, stuff like promo items or, things that are on their shelves that are soon to expire. Distributors, obviously, have the ability, you have, oversight generally of larger stores of inventory, have an idea of like what is going to expire at any given time. That has been, SB 34 has been a big, I think a boon to some of the distributors, because, they buy and store, in bulk, right? And, if they have lots of product that all this, for whatever reason, aren't selling, and they're, flour that's more than 6 months old, or, things that are just less valuable, or things that would otherwise discount or maybe promo out anyway. Those become viable SB 34 donations. And again, as long as it's otherwise compliant, right, non-expired and otherwise metric compliant, any product can be donated. And it goes through the exact same supply chain as every other legal product in the state. The only difference is at the point of sale, whether it's a storefront or a delivery service, instead of obviously, exchanging money, verify they're a patient, keep documentation of their patient status, and, give them the bag. That has been, and that's what SB 34 is at its very core, right? It is nothing else, right? When the state doesn't make a determination and say, oh, this person is a qualified patient. No, anyone with a doctor's recommendation, right? So doesn't only serve veterans, it can serve, again, anyone with a doctor's recommendation. And as far as like what, medical or, respecting that, different municipalities, jurisdictions still have, medical and adult use licenses, any license type holder or any any holder of any kind of retail license type can participate, whether you're deemed medical or adult use. So, it's not restricted to, medical only retailers as where they still exist, which is, I think, definitely less and less common. More and more jurisdictions are going over to adult use, and as you go to adult use, medical becomes less. There becomes less of a reason, I think, to maintain a medical program, largely because there's very little difference, from the consumer point of view between adult use and medical at this point, right? Unless you're an MMIC card holder where you can get excused some taxes if that particular dispensary sort of honors that, which they're supposed to, but it's not the patient experience from what I understand at all times. Okay, so let me.
And we also get cannabis brands to donate brand new products. So as well as like the recipients might get some like stuff that's like getting close to the date, extra promo stuff. We also develop partnerships with our brands and say, hey, we're doing a program. Can you send us, some medical products? So it's really nice to see like these different, levels working together.
Yeah, and you're right. It's not only, soon to expire product or things of that nature. Some brands do, dedicate certain amounts of their like product budget to SB 34 donations, or I'll get into I'll mention your cannabis a little bit later as well. They are a group that has worked with different operators in the supply chain to make purpose-made SB 34 donations, right? So they're taking product that's specifically set aside for or that's being specifically committed for patient use, and they are doing these co-created products where they have, pretty much every step of the manufacturing and distribution process is being donated, right? So cultivators donating the flower, the distributor, co-packer, is donating, labeling, packaging, transportation, testing labs are donating, the testing services, retailer staff is, doing all the in-processing and, patient verification. So when it's spread out across the supply chain, not everybody has something to do, but not everybody has to do everything.
Yeah.
And when it comes to, but I'll be honest, I have yet to really see a self-sustained industry effort, right? The successful efforts that I've seen are the ones that draw on, existing patient groups, nonprofits, or other folks active in the community that can connect a lot of the dots between the retailer, basically the final point of, access, which is, the retailer, and actually people who could actually need, could benefit from it. So our focus has obviously been on veterans, but VCC is not trying to replicate what, the American Legion or the VFW or, any other veteran organization or normal, right? Like this from inception, my goal in this was to, hopefully breathe some, put some new ideas and put some new efforts out into action that could show how, or better demonstrate like the interconnect, the intersection between, patients in the community, right? Because it's like a veteran doesn't just exist as a veteran, right? They're also, they're members of their community, and they've got, in some cases, half of all veterans over 65. So a lot of them are seniors, right? And they've lived long lives. They've got, networks and experiences that stretch, far beyond just their military service. And so while, the veteran angle is a good touch point for people to easily grasp and say, oh yes, of course, we all want to help veterans, right? The reality is that just because, veterans benefit, and the fact that veterans benefit, having, in many cases, some of the most severe, complex, rare, diseases and conditions, in medical, certainly currently being treated, and they benefit from cannabis in these very like crude ways, right? Smoking a joint, or, and it's like, and suddenly, and that works where, half a dozen pharmaceuticals and, a year of prolonged exposure therapy, didn't. Again, it's not to say that no pharmaceuticals are effective. It's not to say that no therapy is effective, but we never really acknowledge, and it's never honestly acknowledged, I think, that it doesn't really work that well for most people. And that's not to say that, again, there's no utility or there's no reason to continue, in these like traditional treatments, but there's certainly no reason to hold out and think that like you're going to suddenly make all of these better and like you can just ignore how people are living and using cannabis in addition to these other tools that they have available to them, right? And again, cannabis is not, I don't ever really see it as a panacea or, a silver bullet to everyone's medical problems. But in my experience working with patients, it's an enabler, right? All these things that they used to love to do that they couldn't do because their condition is keeping them at home or keeping them bedridden, or they're too in pain, or they don't find joy because there's just any number of reasons as to why we stopped doing things that we used to derive pleasure or feel some sort of like personal fulfillment or sustainment from, right? Mm-hmm. And trauma is a great way, often helps separates us from that for a variety of reasons in a number of ways. Now, add cannabis to that, and in the most desperate of situations, people, obviously not all. I mean, our suicide rates are still astronomical, and it's not as though it's not as though it's like it's gonna do all this by itself, right? But it can provide you, I think, that window of relief mm-hmm. to reassess for many and to start to learn more about it, because smoking a joint, getting THC, all great. THC is a great pain reliever, going to help you sleep. But if you're dealing with chronic inflammatory issues or severe complex issues, there's a whole spectrum of cannabinoids out there that might be helpful for you, right? And we do ourselves a disservice really just focusing only on THC or only on CBD, especially when we acknowledge that they all do something. Again, I can't make claims as to what THCV does versus like CBDV or the acidic precursors or whatever, right? Like, but we know enough at this point to know that they all have effects on our endocannabinoid system. They all do something, and they all have similar properties to a point, right? Like they all seem to be pretty anti-inflammatory. Yeah. Which in most people's case, are dealing with chronic issues. You see like advertisements for like immune boost, and it's like you don't want to boost an immune system. You also don't want to suppress the immune system. You want a immune system in homeostasis, right? Like that's the best place for your immune system. But because so many people are dealing with chronic issues that basically boost their inflammation, they need something to help modulate that. And cannabis, again, it seemingly is one of those sort of Swiss Army knives of Swiss Army knives of molecules within the cannabis plant that all seem to be pretty anti-inflammatory. But again, without public knowledge, and education, without a way to actually connect people with the medicine they need, all of this is just theoretical, right? Back to SB 34, this is turning theory into action. What we have the potential to do is far beyond just giving free weed to people who need it, right? This could be it's a million use cases, a million patient narratives. In a state of 40 million people, there's a million and a half veterans alone in California, right? When you think about how many people could benefit from cannabis, how many adults could benefit from cannabis, just cutting it down, even narrowing it a little further, we are in the millions. So, these programs currently, we're hitting hundreds, maybe in the low thousands of patients, across all these, collective efforts. But even still, the people that are coming in are not the only people that could benefit from it. There are so many people in the communities that we all live in and that we all, work in and hopefully we serve, who could also benefit, and the state is not going to reach them. Currently the industry is not really spending a lot of effort to reach them. And, and to the extent that like the nonprofits and other educators, it's a huge task to think about, like, how do you, figuring out like what the barriers are that people have in their minds to, seeing this in a different way, and being honest and being transparent and, and respectful in addressing that, right? Because you're not going to change any minds, berating people. And honestly, I don't even find it useful to really challenge people when they have beliefs I don't believe in. I think it's always a better choice to model the thing that you're talking about, right? Or, just have someone speak to, or have someone, switch over to find someone else to speak to their experience, right? Like whatever you do, in all of our conversation about cannabis, there's really no denying, what people have felt, experienced, the changes that they have seen in themselves, the changes that others have seen in them, right? Again, it's not a randomized clinical trial, but at the same time, it's, to me, that is just as much evidence as, an RCT with 40 people. And because because we're kind of working at scale here, in the sense that, there are millions of potential patients, or, millions of potential people who could benefit from cannabis who are not currently using cannabis and have no idea that it might actually help them, to the people who rely on cannabis, and, it is an essential medicine, right? They will suffer. They will, potentially die. And we all die, of course, but, what we're talking about is in all this is it saving lives? But it improves quality of life.
Yeah.
No one knows how many years they got, right? And to live it in constant pain and suffering is one of the worst tortures I could possibly, think of. And so many people are there. And that's the mind-boggling thing, as a patient advocate, because I deal with my own stuff, of course, but, I really count myself extremely lucky when I, having dealt with so many folks who are just under this immense burden of, like, again, severe chronic issues that just, are not treated well and managed well by what's currently available.
No. And
then again, finding cannabis, not a silver bullet, but, that thing that often becomes the catalyst for so much other positive change. And it's, eating, because it's not going to replace a good diet or, exercise or, getting outside and getting the sun or any of these other things that we know we kind of need to do. We all, I think, I'm an extreme hypocrite there, in that, like, I preach this and I struggle, to keep on, good behavior and sort of, mindfulness and these things myself. And I think it's a challenge everyone faces, but that's the reality, right? Like, cannabis just doesn't exist in a vacuum, nor should it. Right. It should be viewed as, as I think this enabling tool. And, when it comes time for the industry to explain this, I think that's where we should lead, right? Like, when it's like, what does the industry get out of participating in SB 34? It's like, again, you get to demonstrate, you get to change people's lives, man. I really don't know a better way to put it. It's not something that really any other industry has. I mean, I would say pharmaceuticals, and I would say they also spend some effort to at least appear to be, charitable, especially with, like, patients who can't afford their incredibly expensive drugs. But no one's giving away tens of millions of dollars just, out the door, like what we can potentially enable through SB 34 in this state.
And I can say, from seeing the pictures of some of these SB 34 donations, I've never seen happier looking folks, to see that they have this big bag of cannabis and know all the comfort that can give to them, that they didn't have to, take from their rent, take from, their food, budget, that they can have all of this product that's going to help them. It's a really great thing to help people. So I agree with that.
I mean, and it's such a huge swing because it's like you're saving people money and you're giving them something that will improve their quality of life. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's like, and the saving the money is also going to definitely improve their quality of life because, that gives them, more security and more, stability. Because that's, so, I'll lead with this little number. So the Canadian Department of Veterans Affairs has a cannabis reimbursement program that will reimburse Canadian veterans up to 3 grams a day of cannabis or equivalent that they get through the legal markets that exist within the country. And like the United States, Canada is a federal system, so different provinces have different, like, legal and regulatory structures when it comes to how they sell cannabis. But
that's really cool.
Right? Right. And again, as far as I know, that program does not exist anywhere else in the world, or any kind of, like, reimbursement program for any kind of, like, or any patient type of that nature. So
even in Israel, they give free health care. The one thing they don't cover is cannabis. So yeah.
Well, I mean, and right, in Canada already, and the thing about the Canadian Department of Veterans Affairs, because every citizen has, gets access to healthcare through Health Canada, they aren't really the pharmaceutical dispensary that the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs is, because unlike in Canada, the Canadian Department of Veterans Affairs is not necessarily the first line healthcare provider for veterans, right? They're just going through, their quasi, I mean, it's not, I don't know if it's a fully universal system, but it's near, type of approach. So what the Canadian Department of Veterans Affairs, like, they spend, on all their drug spending, including pharmaceuticals, they spend more than double, like, their cannabis expenditure is more than double everything else. So, in their most recent year of running this program, because they've been doing it for 6 years, so it's provided some nice little data points as far as, like, what's the average, how much does the average patient consume per year? About 2 pounds equivalent. That's basically what it works out to. So, if you're an average patient, and let's use, veterans as a stand-in for the average patient, and you're consuming 2 pounds a year, that could be anywhere from like $5 to $10 grand, out of pocket in a state like California, buying that on the legal market. And that's a huge out of pocket cost to expect people to absorb. And those are the people who are the, underpinning the entire cannabis market, right? The regular consumers. Patients are heavy regular consumers. Yeah. And again, if you think of it as a vice, then it might make sense to, like, make it less accessible, but it is not a vice. Again, it is a medicine. It is an essential service. The state is already, deemed so, and it's far, we're far past the point where we should be on the defensive, I think, when it comes to making the case. So, building goodwill in communities, pretty straightforward. I mean, again, you're helping people, and if you do it right, you're helping the people in most need. The people who are, in incredibly precarious or vulnerable situations. Think about the context of COVID. Whatever, I'm not going to get into any individual beliefs, but in the sense that, like, there are people who don't get access to their regular healthcare, whether it's oncology, whether it's dialysis, because there is a lot more pressure on the healthcare system than there was 2 years ago. Yep. And I'm not saying that cannabis is going to suddenly take the role of dialysis or oncology or chemotherapy or radiation. But when the reality is that it's either that or nothing. Yeah. Right. That there are a lot of people now that are even more precarious than they were 2 years ago because they have far less consistent access to the healthcare that they relied on, and they're now in this point, they're being put in this desperate position, as are people who are chronic pain patients as well, right? The opioid deprescribing, whatever you think about opioids, they have their uses. They're incredibly, they have incredible broad medical efficacy, and there are lots of people that were stable on opioids, relied on opioids, dependent on opioids, yes, not addicted, which is a very distinct, which is an important distinction. And one that really needs to be understood and destigmatized. And they have all been cut off, denied, abandoned, right? And the diseases and conditions that they had that were producing that chronic pain never went away. Mm-mm. They are just now left to deal with that. Gabapentin, NSAIDs, right? Like non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs like ibuprofen, aspirin, right? Like that's the pain relief options from the medical system when you don't have access to opioids. Right. Mm-hmm. So, you see these upticks, and, obviously there's a connection between, chronic pain, patient abandonment, and suicide, as you can imagine, being in that kind of chronic pain. And again, veterans fall into all of these little cross sections, of patients, which is, why I think, again, we're very, we're effective messengers, because we can speak to so many things. It's like, well, I got PTSD and, X, Y, and Z, and, and I got some chronic, liver stuff. No, not me personally, but, I'm saying there are many veterans that fall into those categories of having to deal with a lot of things. And when people see people like that getting help, yep. Again, that you don't need to sell cannabis at that point, right? People are going to sell it for you. it's amazing. It's incredibly, the right approach. I think it is. Yeah, with the right approach, I mean, you can make believers out of pretty much anyone, right? Start them out with topicals. Candace has an incredible experience, working with seniors. Again, half of all veterans are seniors, or over the age of 65, almost 75% over the age of 50. We're an old cohort, as it were, and old age brings all of these issues that, regardless of whether you serve in the military or not, you're just going to be dealing with.
Yeah.
And so when you have an aging population, as we do, right, and that what's currently available to so many people is just not particularly effective, or it comes with all these negative, side effects. They're all effects, right? Some we like, some we don't, right? It comes with stuff they don't like though, and the bad outweighs the good, and that's really what we all look at with any drug. There's no drug without risk. There's no drug with with effects that we might not like. But through education and obviously, proper dosage and known dose, safe supply, right? Like we can, people can achieve all, non-problematic relationships with all sorts of substances. Cannabis is certainly among them. Okay, yeah, sorry, realize it's going off in a couple tangents here, but I'll switch back to the industry considerations a little bit more, and just get into, talking about waste, the environmental impact of destroying thousands of pounds of flour, the plastic, the oils, the metals, all the things that get landfilled when these products expire, and there's not a means to, get them into the hands of patients. Now, here's the other thing: just because a product expires, doesn't mean it can't be retested.
Yeah.
Right. There is a process for retesting as well. Right. It is more intensive, and obviously, that's less ideal. Right. The ideal is if the product is in danger of expiration, that we get it out before it expires. Yeah. But it is, there are fallbacks essentially, if there's a large enough, or if there is essentially reason, to make that happen. And obviously in the future, the hope is that none of this would ever get destroyed. But right now, it's a lot of individual effort from advocates, from individual advocates within a lot of these, companies within the cannabis industry. Candace, advocates within pharmacy, and, a lot of people, everyone I pretty much work with, we're all volunteers. Everybody's doing their part, right? And that's the reality of how SB 34, I think, functions at its best. Is we all contribute. It gets easier as we kind of work our way through and kind of work the beats out, and success builds on success, and then I think we all start to see oh, okay, well, you do it at one store serving 50 patients, why couldn't we do it in another store and serve 100 or whatever, right? We're still never going to get close to the actual to meeting the actual need that exists. We have to acknowledge that as well. This is all charity, right? Yeah. Charity is a Band-Aid. Charity is a way to highlight where society is failing. And in our case, we can highlight the fact that our society, our state, our local governments are failing us as consumers, as voters, as patients, by failing to make cannabis affordable and accessible. And SB 34 provides a pretty good way to put that spotlight. So I'll just move on. I mean, I think there's, I think there's a lot of kind of the self-explanatory reasons why, the industry benefits, from something like this. Of course, it doesn't, if you stop at just, I'm going to give away free cannabis, the benefits that you're going to reap from that are minimal, right? Mm-hmm. Without investing resources and people, whether it's staff time or actual money into, connecting those dots between the patients and the education and the communities that you're in, right? There's so many tie-ins and there's so many local issues that you could turn SB 34 at and say, well, why don't we see if this might be able to help in this particular case, in this known issue? And opioids, or just drug overdoses in general are kind of an easy one to hook into, largely because, again, at its core, it's a harm reduction tool as well. Yeah. It's if you can, I'm not, there are people that need opioids, but if you can use THC effectively for pain relief, that means that you don't need opioids or need very little, so much the better, right? Like it's trying to find the least risky, most beneficial option to help people manage whatever they're managing, and acknowledging that like it's going to be different for everybody, right? So we can't apply stigma and say, oh, because you use an antidepressant and cannabis, like you're not, it's like, oh, none of this exceptionalism, right? Cannabis is, again, it's molecules, man, and these molecules have interact with all these receptors through our body. Luckily enough for us, and this has been waiting in the wings for humans to get over themselves and get our shit together and really start to investigate. But it is just we are just at the tip of the iceberg, with all of this. So, how SB 34, in brief works for a patient. Again, a qualified patient in the eyes of the state is anyone with a doctor's recommendation or an MMIC. Doctor's recommendations obviously being the easiest way. The added component with that is that a retailer, storefront, or delivery has to verify the doctor's recommendation is valid and has to document that and keep those documents for 7 years. Now, who's going to be here in 7 years? I don't know, like where we're all going to be at. But like that's what the state's currently requiring. So, while the state, SB 34 makes mention of nonprofits and, other kind of community groups, it is not essential for the industry to work through nonprofits or anyone else to do SB 34 donations. Pharmacy, if it wanted to, could just do it itself and doesn't have to involve anyone else. Doesn't have to ask, right? Like you have the legal right. You have the legal process to do so. You can serve anyone with a doctor's recommendation. You can put whatever, restrictions or, qualifications you want on that. It is whatever you really want it to be. Obviously, I think because, in that sort of flexibility, it can be a lot of things. And I think it makes sense for most folks to, I would hope the industry would basically, focus on like what makes sense for you, right? Like, again, depending on where you're located and where you're operated, if you're in rural, the rural part of the state or, again, like there's a lot of different environments, different communities served. Understanding that, I think, is just in general a good idea. And SB 34 provides a way to start a conversation, maybe if you haven't had that yet, right? If you're running into folks who are, consistently resistant to, to like cannabis, let's say, it might behoove you to engage them and say, well, listen, there might be some things you're not aware of, and let's be, and here is what cannabis is today, right? It is not just smoking. It is this incredible spectrum of basically anything, right? Because it's a molecule. You can distill it into an oil. You can, isolate it into a powder, and from there you can put it into pretty much anything. And that's great because there's really no barrier. Basically, there's a form factor I think that everyone could be comfortable with. Mm-hmm. And again, it doesn't only have to be THC. Our focus has been on that largely because that's the only molecule group that's still scheduled. With the Farm Bill, hemp cannabinoids, which is everything else other than THC, is all free to investigate and grow and process and sell. Obviously, the FDA has not made any statements or findings regarding efficacy of these things. But again, it can operate in the exact same way that dietary supplements, food and drink already operate. And obviously the market is going to outpace the science for years to come, right? But the industry, doesn't, again, you don't have to wait for an RCT to start doing, some focus grouping and start figuring out like, hey, how are people reacting to these things? I'll share real quick, CBN, there is a study that associates CBN when used with THC with a sedative effect. Mm-hmm. Or an increased sedative effect. That's it. It's a single study, hasn't been replicated, has not been, and has not been reinvestigated by anyone else. So everybody follows the leader, and everybody says CBN is, for nighttime. And yet, dealing with patients who have used high CBN concentration products, they report it as being energizing. So, okay, right? Like, again, we have to be humble, I think, in our approach. THC is the most well understood molecule. We can safely say certain things, and I'm backed by the National Academy of Sciences when I talk about chronic for chronic pain, for multiple sclerosis related spasticity. chemo-induced nausea. There's a few well-supported, well-understood indications for THC. In the real world, a lot of people use THC for sleep, right? So, CBN isn't necessarily required if you already can, find an effective, sleep aid with a THC component. But again, if you don't have to use THC, some people find CBD to be sedating too, when used in certain settings. So again, it is just acknowledging that what we don't know, which is a whole lot, acknowledging that everybody kind of reacts differently, even to the same molecule, and then working our way from there and just being open and, and hopefully collecting as much information as we can, because again, we're going to, what we're doing and how we're consuming right now, that's going to be guiding research for the foreseeable future, as it should, right? Lived experience with cannabis is going to be guiding that. All right. So I'll finish up here. There's a few groups. Sorry. There's a few groups that, we currently work with. Obviously, Dear Cannabis, I mentioned earlier, Operation EVAC, and Sweetleaf Collective, and Weed for Warriors all operate a lot of donation sites, through the Central Valley, Northern California. Weed for Warriors also has a couple in LA and I think San Diego County. Sweetleaf has been helping out, recently helped out Compassionate Healing Group. Joe Arione has some great connections with a lot of local legacy farmers in NorCal, and he's been working very hard.
Because they were one of the parties behind the passage of this bill. They were giving away tens and tens of pounds of cannabis, and they were going to pay the taxes, and that's one of the catalysts for getting this passed. So yeah, shout out to Sweetleaf.
Yeah, I mean, and Sweetleaf's been around since '96, and it's so like this is what's happening here has been it's been happening at some level for a long time. At the same time, it's never really been much, right? Yeah. And that's definitely been the case in Southern California, which is very clear. I've seen that, and I've learned that very, very. The market out here has never really been oriented toward patients. It was all about export and exotics and profit chasing, which is fine. Again, you got to do what you got to do, but it also denies the broader benefit of what cannabis means. When you constrain it to this luxury item or to this profit, this for-profit item. And SB 34 again kind of allows you to reverse that entire narrative, from an industry standpoint, and say no, it's not about the money. We're giving it away for free, right? Yeah. And you could say it's you could and justify to the patient why they're paying thousands of dollars, because we have to pass down all of these costs onto them. And, they are, forced into the unregulated market as a result. So, I mean, there's, and I, as we talk about patients, one thing I've had to clarify recently was how there's specific law, a specific part of the statute saying, medical patients can possess up to 8 ounces of flower. But they don't make any specific mention of what that, what that would look like in terms, we have a conversion, in the adult use market, an ounce of flower, 8 grams of concentrate, but that plant conversion actually doesn't exist anywhere in the statute. In the medical side of things, right? In the code and enforcement. So so it's there's a lot of, there's still a lot of things that can be, SB 34 gives the industry the ability to give away a lot of medicine to an individual patient as well, which is exactly what Sweetleaf has been doing. They try to do bulk donations, that'll tide their members over for, 3 to 4 months, maybe 6 months, depending on the size, and that's a huge, that's a huge improvement to a patient's state of mind, knowing that they reliably have it on hand, knowing that they don't have to ration, knowing that it's oh, well, what if I'm sick next month and I can't make it to the donation, right? So that's not to say that monthly donations aren't the norm or should be the norm, but it is also just to point out that, if the goal here is to serve people, then, we should serve people where they're at and serve people how they're best served. Everybody's different, so some people can make it out every month, but, we need to be able to hit those who will never be able to go into a dispensary as well, right, for whatever reason. And let me close with just some information. Veterans Cannabis Coalition. We got a website, Instagram. Kind of been slacking on the social media stuff as we've been building out all these other things. But we're always active, and we've got multiple partners that we work with on a regular basis to support donations, and we've got a lot in the pipeline that we hope to see expanded. And our focus is in Southern California. Hope to have a good at least one site in every county, and preferably where we see patients coming from.
Yeah.
Right? Like a lot of patients are currently commuting from the desert cities, or like the high desert, Inland Empire, into Santa Ana specifically, and into like the LA area, because that's where the donations are happening, not because they're the only people. So it's like and for me it's a hard thing to kind of condense like patients driving 4 or 6 hours round trip just to get their meds, right?
They'll do it though. They need it and they can't afford it, and they don't want to go to the black market. And you've seen hundreds of people show up and drive that far.
And that just kind of underlines like the need that exists. And we're best served, I think, by having as many folks participating as possible, but also making sure that we're not just this isn't an end, this isn't a means to itself, right? This is a means to the end, which is making it all more affordable and accessible. That means that we don't have to deal with this charity thing anymore, because like eventually the state's going to be paying for it and going to be providing it just as they do other services, right? Because it is a service. I would think, medical cannabis provision, a service, just as housing or food or anything else. It's something that people rely on, and we can get there, but it's not going to happen on its own, certainly. So we're going to have to push that case.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be people like you, working to make this program available and educating people about it. In fact, everything I know about SB 34, I actually learned from you. So thank you so much for, working to educate different people in the industry. And, it's a continuing effort. It's not just educating the retailers, getting the brands on board and getting the patients on board. So it's a huge concerted effort. And I thank you for, doing all the work that you have. And now I'm going to share just a little bit about the pharmacy program. And again, this is all based off of wonderful information that you provided to me. So if we have any dispensary owners or operators that are watching, definitely reach out to Eric. He can help give you all the necessary documents that you need, help you come up with an SOP. It kind of seems overwhelming, but with all the help that he was giving me, I was able to put this program together. And so I'm just going to share a little bit with you guys before we conclude about the pharmacy SB 34 program. So again, some of this information is what Eric already talked about, what the name is, what the act was named after. The law does not provide a tax incentive, but it eliminates the disincentive of having to pay taxes or excise taxes on these products. So at the Pharmacy SB 34 program, we're starting it at our Santa Ana and Berkeley location. So if you're in Orange County or the Bay Area, you can turn your paperwork into either one of those locations, or you can get it online as well and submit it. Starting January of this year, we're going to do 20 care packages per month at each of the 2 locations. There is going to be an open enrollment period, which is right now until we get up to our 20 patients. And then after that, we're going to open it up again in 6 months and see if we're able to take more than 20 patients. The goal really is, like Eric said, to get people off the black market. A lot of people that use large amounts of cannabis can't pay the high prices at dispensaries. And so sometimes they're forced on the black market. Also, we find that some people that are barely affording their cannabis are only allowed to buy or can only afford one cannabinoid. Like Eric was said, they've only been using THC. They didn't have the luxury or the budget to try CBN or THCV or CBG or any of the others. So with these care packages, we're also hoping to include other products that they otherwise probably wouldn't have been able to afford in their budget. So exposing them to new cannabinoids that they may find were even more effective for them than other ones. So lots of good reasons for us to be involved. So for our pharmacy program, you have to be 21 years old. You have to be a California resident. As Eric said, you have to have a medical cannabis recommendation that's current. And nowadays you can get recommendations for like as little as $39, so it's actually pretty easy to get one nowadays, and you can do it over the phone. So really not a barrier. And then for our program, you either need to show a veteran status or just a medical or financial need. And, it's different. There's no set income level. It's a case by case basis. So if you think that you're not able to afford your cannabis, please apply. Don't feel like because, you you have, what you need to survive, that wouldn't qualify you. That's not true. If you are interested in applying, you can email me at Candace@pharmacysantaana.com for the information and for the link to the application. And I also put this presentation in the handouts so for those of you that are watching live, you can get this presentation, and then you'll have on the last slide, it actually has the link for the application. So like I said, the enrollment is going to open every 6 months. If we're going to add new people or if we're replacing people, you're going to have to fill out an application, which is just an online application, should take less than 5 minutes. Submit your documentation, which is your medical recommendation, your ID, and then the program manager, will confirm all your documents, your recommendation, and then I'll send you a confirmation email to let you know that you've been approved. Once you've been approved, you'll be in our program for 1 year, and then after that 1 year time, you can reapply. And then program members can be removed by request, or if you fail to pick up your package for a couple months, then we'll remove you and allow somebody else to take your space. And then so here, just last slide for those of you who are downloading it, or if you want to look it up afterwards, the California Department of Agriculture and DCC and Tax and Fee Administration already has bulletins out. Metric has bulletins, step-by-step instructions. So a lot of information there to help people get guided through the system. So yeah, a lot of information that we shared today, but I think this will really be helpful for those, that are having to use the illegal dispensaries, or, can't get enough medicine, on their own. These SB 34 programs hopefully will become more abundant, and we'll have more locations where people can get, their donated cannabis across the state. Let me see. So Eric, where can someone volunteer to support to these groups or to go to work at the events? I'll ask you that one question before we wrap up. That was a question from our audience.
Okay, yeah, pretty simple. I mean, I would look at LA and OC Normal, just to give both plugs. Both Candace and Shelly, is my organizing partner, is also working simultaneously with LA and OC Normal, on the compassion efforts. So there's some infrastructure that you can, that volunteers can plug into, I think, at this point, which is nice. Thank you to the normal chapters for taking this up, because that's been a really nice change to kind of develop this as like a, what's becoming kind of like a joint program. And again, just a great way to sort of demonstrate like what cannabis can do for people.
Yeah, definitely. And it's, we're hitting all levels. We're working with our legislators, we're working with the cannabis industry, and we're working with patients, so really engaging everybody. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Candace.
With SB 34 and for the veterans. You definitely stand out above all the activists for being so dedicated and giving so much of yourself. So thank you so much.
That's my pleasure. Thank you, Candace.
Yeah. And thank you to our audience for joining us today. I hope that you enjoyed our presentation and that you were able to pick up on some information that will help you become better informed cannabis consumers, and that the information that we provided will help you find relief. Until next time, stay safe and well.